Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to week 6, day 26 of the Inspiring Workplaces Summer Series. My name is Kay and I'm part of the H&H team. We're a creative internal comms and employee engagement specialist and one of this year's sponsors. In today's session, we're going to hear from Helen Bisset, one of the co-founders and MD of H&H. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Helen for quite a few years now. We both share a real passion for IC, people development, employee engagement and well-being. I can always guarantee after a conversation with Helen, I feel really inspired, energised and intrigued. And I'm sure after today's talk, you will too. It's a real privilege to introduce Helen. She's extremely inspirational and I'm really looking forward to hearing her insights. So with that said, H, it's over to you. I'm intrigued to know, can great IC be good for your health?
Okay, so that was wonderful introduction. That makes me blush a little. I just would hoping that I am now sharing my screen because I can see nothing else. But if nobody gives me any shouts out, then I'll crack on. So I think really, as we shift to a new world of hybrid working, employee well-being remains a key priority. Goodness knows, even in the talks that we've done here, there's a lot of focus on well-being. And pre-pandemic, we did some research around the relationship between good and poor internal communications and feelings of well-being. Do you know what? Even though in my heart of heart, I knew that there must be a link between the degree, between internal communications and people feeling good, the degree of correlation turned out to be rather quite extraordinary. Today, I'm going to share you some headlines from the research and explore possible reasons behind the symbiotic relationship. And by doing so, presenting a case why I think that IC should be regarded as a central pillar of a wellbeing strategy, not just a vehicle for promoting one. Let's have a look at research. So we had 528 participants in the research. It was published in 2019. You can see there that they were a good, broad, representative mix of gender, age, geography, and job roles in private and public sector, all UK based. As part of the research, we utilised a model from the field of positive psychology to support and help us understand that people's workplace experience and how it might be affecting their emotional well-being. Let me just show you this model for a second, explain this a little bit. What we've got here is a quadrant, which is split across high intensity emotions and low intensity emotions, and negative or less constructive emotions, or positive, very constructive emotions. And what we can see here is that actually for us to perform at our best within an organisation or in life, really, to be honest, we want to be aiming for these positive high intensity emotions in the performance sector of the quadrant there that you can see, the green one. And so we can call upon these at any point in time. But the thing is about these performance emotions is it cannot be sustained. At some point, we have to move down into recovery in order for us to be able to continue to operate in the high intensity areas with the emotions. If we do not find a way to find balance across the high intensity positive emotions in terms of moving from performance to recovery, we end up over in survival. Now, I'm sure that many of us watching this will appreciate and recognise some of these emotions that we may have felt from time to time. And there's not a problem if we dip into survival for a little while, as long as we can bounce ourselves back out, usually by going into recovery. But if we spend an inordinate amount of time in the survival area, then what ultimately will happen is we'll end up in burnout. Now, when we asked the respondents within our survey to tell us which of these emotions, I mean, we didn't put them into these quadrants, but we put them as random emotions, which of them did they feel most often at work? And what we got back was, this was the broad spread across all of the full survey. And we had 38% of people who said that they regularly experience performance emotions, which is great news. And it was good to see that 16% of the emotions we felt were those that we would consider to be in recovery area. However, the concern really was about just how much time people were experiencing. Remember, we asked the people to tell us that these are emotions that they felt frequently. And so you can see that 46% of our time at work were potentially experiencing, or the sample was experiencing, survival or burnout emotions. Not an ideal scenario at all. And if you were to extrapolate that to the UK population, it would mean that almost half of us, employees certainly, were experiencing emotional states that not only affect their sense of well-being, but are likely to be on a fast track to both physical and psychological illness. When I asked to respond, so what is this? So you might be thinking, yeah, but what's this got to do with internal communications? And good question. So we asked respondents to rate the quality of the internal communications within their organisation across a range of factors, including quality, frequency, relevance, accessibility, and so on. This is what this is how they rated it. The 40% said it was good or very good. 40% said it was fair, and 20% told us that it was poor or very poor. So what we did then was we cross-referenced the sense of how people rate their communications with the frequency of emotions felt. And this was the result. The red columns are those that experience their organisational communications to be poor or, to be very poor or poor. And the green is those that experience their organisational communications to be good. And you can see here, it's pretty compelling. Even these results surprised us. Then almost people who consider that their internal communications are good are almost twice as likely to feel confident, 2.5 times more likely to feel happy, engaged, and enthusiastic, almost 3 times more likely to feel proud, and 4 times more likely to be optimistic and excited. Now, that was true of the performance zone emotions. So what was the picture in the survival zone emotions? Well, here we can see compellingly that those with poor, who considered their internal communications to be poor, were significantly more often experiencing those sorts of emotions we would expect within the survival zone. So 55% of people regularly felt frustration. There was almost 4 times more likely to feel annoyed regularly, and significantly more likely to feel irritable, anxious, impatient, or worried. And perhaps it's not really surprising when we look at the emotions experienced in burnout, that those who experienced their internal communications as poor were significantly more likely to experience these types of burnout emotions. So that was the experience then in 2019, and that was really, really important findings for us at that point. But what about now? As you know, things have changed, haven't they? And quite significantly over the since 2019. It seems crazy because it seems around the corner. But have things changed? Well, do you know what? If you look at some of the recent studies that are out, this is a new study published literally weeks ago by Business in the Community and the CIPD. And there's evidence. The evidence to show that 41% of employees have experienced mental health symptoms caused or worsened in the last year. Now, if you think about that for a moment, this statistic would be absolutely shocking and almost unacceptable if we were discussing an increase in physical injury at work. Also, further, there was 79% of respondents in the CIPD 2021 Health and Wellbeing Study and survey, which was published earlier this year, also reported some form of stress-related absence in the last year. And as if that, you know, Bloomberg Wealth, they suggest in their piece of work that the working hours have increased by up to 12.5 hours per week over the last year. These numbers are absolutely incredible and very, very concerning. So more than ever, we need to be putting the right things in place to ensure that we promote positive emotional well-being in our organisations. And as we've already shown with some of the data that I've just shown a moment ago, that internal communications does have a key role to play in this, arguably much more than it's often given credit for. But why? Why might it be having such an impact on emotional well-being? This is a big question. And what can we learn that we could take and apply within our organisations right now to help with employee well-being? Well, to help answer that, I'm going to go back into the field of positive psychology, this time to a model developed by positive psychology's founding father himself, Martin Seligman. His PERMA model captures the conditions, I just moved that on. His PERMA model captures the conditions that help us flourish as fully engaged, fulfilled and happy individuals. PERMA stands for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning and achievement. Now let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail, but through the lens of internal communications or employee engagement. So engagement, this is an expression that many of us will be pretty familiar with, I'm sure, and perhaps some of us are a little bit tired of hearing the word. But in the context of Seligman's model, it's about the extent to which we can engage in work that plays to our strengths. Because when we do that, we can experience deeper levels of happiness. So how does employee communications help with that? Well, you can't engage everybody with everything. It's just not possible. So it's important to get people feeling engaged and connected with the stuff that really matters. A good internal communication strategy helps ensure that people are crystal clear on the things that they need to focus on in pursuit of both their personal and the organisational goals. Because regular updates and reinforcements of the important things prevent people getting distracted by activities and tasks that, you know what, might not even be valued, might not make any difference. Good internal communications helps employees know what matters, allowing them to apply their strengths and talents intentionally and therefore help increase that sense of well-being. Okay, let's move on to relationships. Relationships is all about our primate need to connect with others for survival. This has been wired into us since early evolution. The stronger the connection that we have with others in our tribe, the more positive emotions that we will feel. Clearly, internal communications can have a big impact in holding the tribe together. For everything from support managers to have meaningful conversations with their teams, fostering connections between teams, giving employees a forum in which to be able to have their voice heard, creating a sense of shared understanding of what the organisation is and what it's about, keeping people allied to business direction and purpose, and coaching and supporting leaders to connect people with where the organisation's going. And then I often think of internal communications as like the Cilla Black of relationship building within an organisation. Without it, we just would not feel as connected with our colleagues. And of course, therefore, internal communications, again, playing a key role in one of the well-being drivers. Now let's consider meaning. Well, meaning is about belonging to and serving something bigger than ourselves. Many models will tell us that as humans, we need a sense of belonging in order to have a sense of well-being. One of the most obvious ways that I see supports meaning is in the articulation of the vision and the purpose of the organisation in a way that makes sense to the people. And it's often in internal communications that does that in the best way. A great IC team will be constantly working with leaders and managers to continually keep conversations going around the organisational purpose, answering the questions that people will have for that sense of belonging. What are we here for? What are we? What do you need me to do to serve as part of this tribe? And what difference am I making in the world? All of these important questions that gives us a sense of well-being that internal communications is responsible for doing. And the last piece here before we look at the positive emotions is the achievement. It's a section on achievement. Achievement strengthens our self-esteem and our confidence, knowing that we are worth something. And from the perspective of this model, it's about making sure that the sense of achievement is being acknowledged. The IC plays a key role in making sure that this happens across the organisation. Just regular drumbeats on progress towards shared goals can have such a powerful impact on people's motivation and sense of worth. And this, again, is a key role for internal communications within the organisation. Teams who believe in where the organisation is going and are clear that they're achieving together and that they celebrate it together are much happier and much more motivated than those who can't connect their efforts with the bigger picture. You look at anybody who's not happy at work, it's usually because they don't feel connected. And finally, positive emotions. In the context of the emotion, the focus on positive emotion here isn't the act of smiling our way through the day, no matter how we feel at any point in time. It's more based around finding the ability to stay optimistic and to view events and circumstances that life presents us with in a constructive way. So how can IC help with this? Well, it can reinforce a sense of optimism by regularly bringing attention to the good things that are happening across an organisation and what is being achieved. Things can really be easily forgotten when people are in the thick of it, when they're in the thick of the day-to-day cut and thrust, firefighting, getting stuff done. And that's where IC can play a really key role in making sure that people stay informed and can see that there is progress getting made. Look, I'm sure that you can think of loads of other ways that IC can plays a difference in the different elements of this PERMA model. And hopefully, like me, what you can do is you can see that it is quite a useful way of explaining why there may be that real strong link between those people who experience their positive their communications within their organisation as something really positive and their own sense of emotional well-being. Interestingly, if we were to dig a little deeper into our own primary research in 2019, there was actually evidence of this in play. We asked people to tell us how important different workplace factors were and to their sense of well-being. For the purposes of the research, and just so that you're understanding how we did that, we defined well-being as meaning how good someone felt about themselves and the company that they worked for, their ability to reach their potential, how they felt the ability to cope with the normal stresses of life was, and to work productively and fruitfully. Now, this is what people responded to us. This was the responses. So you can see that hardly surprising, really, that one of our hygiene factors was going to be the highest response there. 49% of the respondents told us that job security was very important to them. Then we had salary was at 46% of people told us that. So that's interesting. Both hygiene factors, we would expect them like that. Then we start to get into some other areas of the next most important was interest in work, followed by being clear on what's expected of me. Relationships with colleagues was at 38%. Good communications was at 34%. And here was flexible working at 34%. So what you might notice here is that after the hygiene factors of job security and salary, that arguably the other things can all link back to this PERMA model. So engagement, of course, can link with the interest in work, being clear about what's expected of me, and you can be connected with meaning and achievement. And relationships, of course, is directly related to the idea of our sense of connection and belonging. So what about at the other end of the scale? Well, this was quite interesting also, to be honest, when we look back on it. So you might be surprised to see that when the lowest scoring area in terms of people's own sense of emotional well-being was given back to the community, voluntary work. Gym membership and fitness sessions was the second least popular in terms of importance, as was the styling of the workplace, personal development and training, and perks like private healthcare and pensions were ranked as the lowest. So we thought, I certainly think it's quite interesting, isn't it, that the aspects that are often you often see within a well-being strategy or within well-being packages were significantly less important or considered less important by our respondents, and the well-being strategy, things that were really important to them, are not always considered or thought holistically as part of the well-being package. So this is why I think that we need to look at well-being in a more holistic way, that we might get better results from focusing more on ensuring that we're keeping work interesting, that we're being very clear what we want from people, and we're fostering great relationships between colleagues. The key message being that although we might find ourselves under pressure into focusing attention on the sexy well-being stuff of the moment in an attempt to improve emotional well-being at work, we maybe need to be thinking about some other stuff. Before the pandemic, many organisations were attempting, and I think it's great, don't get me wrong, this is okay, I'm good with this because I think we did it as well as a team, and we still do, that we're attempting to tackle it with initiatives like yoga, mindfulness, self-awareness training, mental health, first aiders, these initiatives, and all of them are very good. But as Business in the Community and the CIPD have said both in their reports on wellbeing, that these initiatives, to a large extent, are aimed at dealing with the symptoms of low wellbeing rather than the cause. So, and the BNTC report goes on to say that the employee emotional well-being is best supported when employees feel valued and appreciated, when they are doing work that has meaning and purpose, when they have autonomy over how and where they do their job. It is about having balance between work and home. It's feeling supported by good relationships with colleagues and peers. It's about being clear about what they're there to do. And it's about being safe and able to speak up and be listened to. And all of these are either influenced, strengthened, or stimulated through well-managed employee communications. And so for me, that is why I believe definitely that internal communication should be regarded as a central pillar of a well-being strategy and not just a vehicle for communicating one. And that is, what do you think of that, Kay?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I always get inspired and I'm always intrigued by your insights, Helen. I think that was really, really interesting. I've seen the PERMA model before, and I think it's a really great model. I've never seen it connected to um, IC and well-being in that kind of context. And I think that's really given me some great insight into how that can be very easily used and applied, and the relationship between actually how important, how you talked about the fact of IC, we use IC as the vehicle when actually it's a really important part of well-being
Absolutely.
for our people. So yeah, so it's just that shift in mindset, isn't it? And I think looking at IC and well-being through a different lens can really raise the idea of how we can do things that are really simple. And it's not just about leaders, is it? It's not just about leaders focusing on well-being. It's about all of us taking ownership and responsibility for our own well-being, and also for one another.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the key thing, again, it's about siloed, if we have silo mentality around whose budget this is. We've always found, it's been beautifully refreshing over the last few years, particularly, where we're seeing IC is not like cut off and it's got its own budget over there and HR's over here and L&G's over there. We're starting to see that the people connecting the budgets and the investment around the people, and it isn't just about there's the training budget, there's the communication bit, etc. And I think that this needs to be part of the dialogue also. So when traditionally and still HR tend to be the budget holders for the well-being strategies and how we do that, I think that there's a broader dialogue to be had about where that budget's getting spent and utilised to draw out the best in everybody, really.
Absolutely. And I think you described it, it's about that holistic view, of well-being, and it's not just a one-off yoga session or a pension, or I thought that those stats were really insightful, and having the combination of pre-pandemic and during, and actually how that has really shifted, and working remotely, working hybrid, and all these different combinations of how that has raised its head even further. So I think it's certainly given me some real food for thought, and that that real consideration of how do we in the IC, the L&D, HR community, make sure that we work together cohesively and collaboratively to ensure that well-being is on the agenda, and how IC can absolutely drive that forward.
Yeah, boom. Yeah. So I'm hoping the listeners have found that useful as well. And of course, anybody, please get in touch if you want us to share any of that information, that data, because I'd love it to be shared more widely within the organisations.
Yeah, it's absolutely one to go back and rewatch, and I should be doing that, because those stats were very insightful, and as you said, some of them very eye-watering as well.
Okay, brilliant.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was fantastic. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Obviously, Inspiring Workplaces and the summer series continues tomorrow. So thank you all for joining us. Please join us again tomorrow, when the session is going to be, I can tell you, it's Beyond Pay. So how GIS's innovative approach to employee reward recognition and wellbeing created a powerful employee value proposition. So I'm sure that's a very important segue into tomorrow's session, and I shall certainly be joining. So thank you all. Take care.